Hey guys, this is Cassie,
I'm Kylie.
I'm Alex.
I'm Catherine.
and this is
Sports Dilemma. Today we'll be discussing the gender pay disparities among different sports within NIL, and we'll also be bringing in a few guests to chat about their experiences and opinions on the topic.
Now we have two USC football players joining us. The first one being Jalen Smith, who is a cornerback senior, and the second being Christian Pierce, who is a safety sophomore.
Okay, let's get right into it.
How has NIL changed college sports in your opinion?
It kind of like boosted the business aspect. It was like made it more political in a way. It's more of like pay to play. If you're good, you're gonna get money. Like if you're, it just takes away all the hard work and everything that everybody puts into their sport, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, if you look in both ways, like it's a good way for, student athletes to make money and, you know, provide for their families. But like on the other aspect, like some people are not making money, like walk-ons and different things like that. So I think it's just more political. It's a lot more that goes behind it now. It's more of a business now rather than just like a sport you love.
Were there like specific challenges you guys faced individually when going through the process for like the first time?
Well, my first couple years in it, I mean, it was like it was new, so everybody was like kind of trying to like figure out where they fit in at like in the industry or whatever. So I think like it was kind of hard just like trying to kind of get a sense of where I my value and everything like that. It kind of like just can't like makes you look at yourself in the mirror like damn, like am I who I say I am? You know what I'm saying? But then again, just like hard work, anything like that, it's gonna pay off, like I said. But yeah, I mean, you're gonna have them challenges and stuff like that. You're gonna credit question yourself. I mean, just when money's involved, because it's like you're gonna start off somewhere, but it's not gonna be what you actually think it's gonna be. So I feel like it's a motivational thing. It's a motivational aspect, but it's like shit, this where I'm at and this where I gotta get to. You know what I'm saying?
I say like realizing like what's real money and what's fake. Like what's all the difference between just them saying it and difference between them actually going and talking to donors or talking to alumni and really kind of making it happen instead of just wolfing and talking about it, I guess.
How do you manage the pressures of maintaining your athletic performance with managing NIL deals?
You're not used to posting a lot. You're not used to making videos, public videos. You gotta like step out your shell. Uh, there's certain stuff that
Yeah, I guess it just turns into like more of a profession because at the end of the day, it's like it's what like NFL players would do, I guess. Like they how they get their check is determining how they play week to week. So it's like um
more of a profession, like you were saying from the first thing. Like it's everything,
yeah,
like even from the money standpoint, everything becoming more of a business, and that's crazy. Yeah.
that
So there's like obviously NIL gaps on the team, and do y'all think that like affects the team at all?
in some way, yeah, for sure. You feel me? That's for people who actually care and like you feel me. There could be situations where it's like I'm doing this and that on the field, my performance this and that, but he's getting paid this amount but not doing as much as I'm doing. Like I feel like there could be a lot of that going on. And I feel like that's the positive and negative of having NIL in college football is because of that. Like we were saying kind of before, like it really turns into like a business and like a performance based type deal. So it's like yeah, I feel like it's just what it is in college football right now.
Do you see more opportunities with women rather than men in the NIL space or vice versa?
I feel like it's equaling out. I feel like just with the rise of women's basketball, just on both levels, college and WNBA, I just think like at the rate they're going right now, women's, I feel like it's on the rise to like kind of equal out. Because I feel like the endorsement deals, I feel like in this level of college, like it's all to like brand deals, like clothing and sportswear, swimwear. It's different things that you can do now and as an athlete now. So I feel like it's kind of equaling out. Like both people can do whatever. Like Aloe, Kim Kardashian got the man. Like she just, you know what I'm saying, just switching it up. So I feel like it's equaling out.
Yeah, I agree.
Where do you guys see the direction of NIL heading?
Well, college football like the NFL. And I feel like it's just becoming, like I said, like just like how college basketball, it's gonna become more like the WNBA. Like it's all gonna be could become like copycat pros and just more political, more business like because of more money involved. Just now with the new law being passed, where like the school can now actually pay for like actually pay the players now and play athletes now. So it's money being important to NIL and stuff like that. So it's like just more money gonna be involved, more political stuff, more business, and yeah, more changes to the sport for sure.
Hi, Amari. You have a astonishing resume in the golf industry, and you are one of the few people in the golf circle, in the golf world, that has huge NIL deals. And my question, just in general, like from the start, is like, how has NIL changed college sports in your opinion?
I think NIL has changed college sports because I think it's given the athletes the opportunity that they've always deserved. I've always felt like athletes in college put in a lot of work, and I think they don't get to reap the benefits from it. And now with NIL being and such a new thing, it gives athletes the opportunity to make money for all the work that they put in. And I think it's not really just about the work either. I think athletes bring a lot to the school in general. I think they shape the image of their athletic programs. And honestly, when you think of the athletic programs of certain universities, you think of certain athletes.
Right.
So when you think of those athletes, I really think it puts them at a disadvantage before NIL to not make money and not capitalize off their marketability. And so now that gives them the opportunity to do so. And I think moving forward, it's going to be a key recruiting tool for universities, for all athletic programs for sure.
Do you think you had a different NIL experience compared to others, and how?
Yeah, I think first of all, I think I had a way different experience than golfers for sure. So I
Right.
think for me, my experience was so different because like coming into school, like I was already a hot commodity in a way because
Yeah.
I was I was pretty good at golf. I came in as a top recruit, and then obviously my background is very similar to a person in golf who honestly changed the game, which is Tiger Woods. So I think me coming in having a very similar story to him, it made it a little bit easier for companies and brands to market me because it was just so easy to them and it really made sense. Like for me, like signing with Nike was always something that I wanted to do, and I was already kind of with Nike as a junior, and but it wasn't for money. And then now that NIL gives me that opportunity, I think it makes it easier for them to buy into younger golfers, to help lift up, the brand, because Nike's not, you don't necessarily think of Nike golf, like you just think of Nike. So I think they're using like NIL for them was huge because it kind of brings up that division of Nike. And then for other, like brands as well that I did, like Bank of America, like they were buying into the Augusta National Women's Amateur, which is like a huge golf amateur events. So like marketing the young golfers coming up in college was good for them, was a good marketing strategy for them because like by paying us to help them.
Are you known,
Right, like it's in the name. Like when you
Right.
think of a basketball player getting NIL, you don't necessarily think about like their performance and how they play. Like it's literally in the name. It's like name, image, and likeness. Like what's their name? Like how can we market off of their name? Like if like for instance, like if they have a cool name, like something that maybe relates to the sport or like makes them like seem cool. And then
Right.
like do you have an image? Like do people like seeing you? Like I think it's really all in name, and that's the part that I was trying to get at, like where golf is so different or like smaller sports are so different because a lot of times it's hard to not buy into the performance because we're in an individual sport. So I think that's why it's easier to buy into more team sports because it's like you're really buying into the player and what they bring, like just as themselves. Like if you remove them from the sport, you still know who they are.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
where it's tough with golf. Is like it's hard to remove even me. Like it's hard to remove me from golf and still market me like to these other companies and brands. Like, and that's the part that like, universities need to figure out moving forward, and like companies in general too.
Do you think there should be like a social change within NIL in a sense of like colleges like changing how they market their players, or just do you think like there should be a shift within just NIL in general?
I think both. I think universities have to be able to do the research and also like understand that the athletes that are in the bigger sports don't just bring like all the money to the table. Like you have so many sports, you have so many athletes. Like using those resources that the university has and putting that into all of their athletes, like making that a priority, is going to be something that like these universities are going to have to keep doing, like moving forward. They have to like pursue that, and that needs to be like their next big thing. Like I feel like there's always something in university that they're always striving for with their athletes, and since NIL is so huge now, like that's something that they really have to buy into.
Right.
And that means really buying into all of their athletes. Like I know a lot of universities have their like collectives, like USC has House of Victory, and I know like Oregon has their Birds of a Feather thing, but it's like you have those, but you have to actually use those and not just for football players or basketball players.
Right.
Like it has to be for everybody, and it's gotta in it. I don't know. I don't know if it needs to be within the teams in itself, like, pushing that agenda for everyone. Um, which obviously social media is a huge part of that.
Right.
But besides that, I think, like I said, I think the idea of NIL needs to be better understood, like moving forward.
Okay, so going based off of what Amari said in terms of there needing to be change within NIL, and how like it's still working towards like evening out the playing field between men and women. Jalen and Christian mentioned how they think that NIL is evening out, but they only mentioned between men's football and women's basketball. So I think that like that difference is kind of interesting to see how like the communicators thought, or like how the communicators answered the question differently and how they perceive NIL.
Yeah, also, I just attended a panel with our USC women's head basketball coach, Lindsay Gottlieb and Juju Watkins, where they discussed a lot of NIL topics that we are discussing here today. And one thing that Coach Gottlieb said was that women are more marketable and are getting more deals than men, but aren't as lucrative, which was really interesting to me because it's so true that all these women in these D1 sports are just as marketable and are getting just as many opportunities, but the numbers just aren't the same.
Kind of saying how like in golf, if you put Amari outside of golf, like she's like no one. But in basketball, like say like Juju, you take her out of basketball, she's still Juju. Like you can market off of her in general, not only in basketball, but just her name in general. And I think that was like I was just talking about like the smaller sports, you can't really do that. But in
Yeah.
like
Right. Exactly.
I think it's also a good space. Like, actually, one of the football players brought this up. Just getting in where you could fit in is what he said, and just capitalizing on those things. Because even though these people in their small sports, like, I feel like there's this like vision that they outside of their sports they can't, which can sometimes be true compared to the bigger sports. But like at the end of the day, like how you feel you are marketable, or how you are marketable is just like what these athletes are at the end of the day capitalizing off of.
Yeah, I agree. And like the football players were saying how like a lot of NIL comes from performance, but I feel like that's not always true. Like
Yeah.
like if that affects other athletes or it doesn't affect other athletes, like the fact that NIL can sometimes be seen as like a popularity contest rather than like performance based, and if it should shift towards more performance based or just stay the way that it is.
Well, then you have unfair situations with like Bronny because his dad basically gave him his NIL, not really his performance. So
Exactly.
there's just cases like that where there's unfair advantages that aren't really controllable.
Yeah.
no, yeah. I feel like another thing that was like from that panel yesterday that we're talking about is like if you go to a smaller school, but you're like really good, and that small school doesn't have that much of like an image or like a reputation or like a support system, like you're not gonna get that NIL. Like say
Right.
yeah,
Especially if you're a woman.
exactly, yeah.
Well, I think the disparities are definitely being brought up. So like this already just having this conversation of like, oh, women in sports specifically aren't getting the same treatment as men. Like that's already a start to social change, which
Right.
wasn't seen before.
Yeah.
Yeah, like acknowledging the gap.
Mhm.
I agree. I think it's just more like making it known to people's brains. Like, hey, like you gotta just keep on saying it, telling people it just needs to be on like more, I think, researched and like examples found
For
too.
sure. And I think like obviously like it's the most reachable through the players themselves, like advocating for themselves, but also like it's super important for those outside people to help to bring more awareness to it, like the professors of who are studying it, the coaches, the trainers, like everybody who's involved, like bringing that awareness to it of the gaps and of the disparities. I think that'll help a lot more too.
Yeah, like even like the donors, like
Yeah.
the people who the brands, like the people who are bringing in this kind of money, like
Yeah.
being aware of like the gap and like trying to bridge that through like their athletes.
And acknowledging who is marketable too.
Thank you guys so much for listening to today's podcast.
And tune in next week for our next episode.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.